And so one of the things that she was able to buy was a DVD of 千と千尋。
Okay.
皆さん、こんにちは。アーサーです。あなたの実際に使える英語のリスニングを鍛えるために、今回の動画はネイティブ同士の会話をお届けしたいと思います。もともと The Austin and Arthur Show という別のチャンネルで僕とアメリカ人の友達のオースティンとの会話を毎週シェアしています。100% 生の会話だし、生の英語が学べるチャンスですが、字幕がないのでちょっとハードルが高いですね。そこで今回は千と千尋の神隠しについて話した動画を日本語と英語の字幕付きでこのチャンネルでシェアしたいと思いました。字幕がついているので自分のリスニングと理解度が両方確認できるのでよろしくお願いします。それでは Let's get started.
What are we going to talk about
We're
today?
talking about 千と千尋の神隠し
Yeah, Spirited
or in
Away.
English, Spirited Away.
Spirited Away. I just want to ask you a question first. Did you hear the phrase Spirited Away before you watched the movie Spirited
No.
Away? Yeah.
No. It was first introduced to me by one of my exchange students that was staying at my house. So this was back in 2006?
Yeah.
No, 2005, I want to say.
Yeah.
And just to give some backstory, so I had just gone to Japan for the first time in 2005. And I stayed for 3 weeks in Japan. I did homestay in Hyogo-ken. If you guys are familiar with Hyogo-ken, it's Sanda.
Sanda. Not Mita, but
Not
Sanda.
Mita, which is, I love it because I work in Mita.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like there's that cool connection.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I stayed there, had a lovely time, absolutely fell in love with Japan. And I came back and my parents were thinking, well, okay, well, he really likes Japan. Maybe we get an exchange student from Japan to stay with us and do homestay during the summer. So they signed up for that. And we had a girl named Ayako.
Ayako.
And she came over and at the time, she was like introducing stuff about Japan. And we went to Uwajimaya.
Uwajimaya in Seattle? Yeah.
And she wanted to get... So Uwajimaya is like this... It's an Asian grocery store, but it's pretty much like Japanese and Chinese.
I mean, there's a Kinokuniya attached to it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's Japanese and Chinese. Like there's really heavy cultural influences from both those countries. And so one of the things that she was able to buy was a DVD of千と千尋.
Okay.
Right. And so she brought this back, and at the time, it's like the only anime I really knew was like Gundam and Dragon Ball. I didn't know any Miyazaki films at the time, and I was like, even though I watched those shows, I wasn't really into anime.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, oh, okay. It's like, this is some cartoon for kids. Like, I'm a teenager now. I'm not a kid.
Yeah.
But she's like, no, just watch it. And so we watched it, and it was like one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just there's so many layers to this film that I don't even know if a single episode really like touch on all of them.
I mean, so we both watched it. We didn't watch it together. Yeah. But we did watch it recently. And when I watched it, I got this huge, like, natsukashi feeling, this feeling of nostalgia that just, not necessarily for when I watched it for the first time, because, sometimes you like kid stuff that you liked when you were a kid.
Yeah.
But there's something about it that just took me back to a time period doesn't exist, and actually I never experienced, but you can feel through the movie almost.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because it's weird. Like, neither of us grew up in the 80s.
Yeah.
Right? We're both 90s kids. But this movie is so heavily influenced by like 1980s Japan.
Okay.
That I feel like just watching the film, you can kind of get an idea of what that was like.
What makes you say that? Because I thought it would be older.
Really?
Yeah, but so what makes you say it's 80s?
So I think of like 1980s Japan because I don't know the exact year this film came out. I should probably
2005.
Yeah, it's something around there. But so the beginning of the film starts with like they're moving from the city to the countryside, right? And Chihiro, who's like the main character, is really upset because she's losing all of her friends that she had in the city. I want to say they're coming from Tokyo, but I don't remember exactly where they're coming from. But they're moving into the countryside, and basically they're moving into a town that was like really, really populous during the bubble era of Japan. Right. And as they're driving through the city, and especially once they park and go into the forest and find the abandoned amusement park, there's all these empty stores. And the idea of like this town is dying that they're moving into, right? And for me, it's like you kind of get these like little glimpses into like what the 80s of Japan were like, with like there was a lot of amusement stuff. Like, you know, you literally have the amusement park, but there's a lot of like I'm trying to think of the word to use, like excess. Yeah. There's a lot of excess everywhere, and it's like you really see that with like the food lying out.
Yeah,
and
so like when the parents are eating the food that they turn into pigs in, there's like a ton of food everywhere, right?
It's just lying out, and I don't want to say like her parents were entitled, but like kind of that mentality, right? Where it's just like, we have plenty of money, we can do whatever we want.
Yeah,
and for me, when I think of like 1980s Japan, I think that mentality of like, dude, we're the richest country in the world. We can do whatever we want. I can have anything I want. I can buy anything I want. I can do anything. And it's like, I think that mentality is what her parents had too. And
well, that's what Yubaba said, is like they were gluttonous. They took food that didn't belong to them. They just ate it.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. But you also see it progress past that, right? Because this is it's not a dead town, but it's a dying town.
Yeah.
The amusement park's dead. Everywhere outside of like the God Onsen is dead area. There's no humans living there.
It's all abandoned.
Yeah. Right. And you kind of see how like Japan's kind of what it looks like after the bubble burst, and like kind of Japan going through the 90s and like everything just dying out outside of cities.
Yeah. No, I really get that. You know, like one thing that's really hit me living here is, you know, sometimes you'll see, like I remember in Roppongi, I went like down in like the center of Roppongi, which is all these high rises, all these big buildings.
Yeah.
And then I saw this one building that was like this dilapidated old wooden building.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy that something like that exists in like a really rich area.
Yeah, right.
Like when you think of Roppongi, or when you think of Ginza, or just in general, when you think of Tokyo, you think really rich.
Yeah, right.
Right? Compared to the rest of Japan, Tokyo is by far considered a rich area, right? Even just like the average salary of someone working here is much higher than working in the countryside.
Yeah.
So you don't really think of like these like abandoned or really dilapidated places, but they exist.
Yeah, right. They exist. They're getting like more and more, you know?
Yeah.
Especially with the population decline.
Yeah.
But so the reason why I thought that maybe it was more about like an older part of Japan is I think about the train scene.
Yeah.
The train scene is my favorite thing.
It feels very old fashioned.
So I got to tell you, a couple years ago, I went to Hokkaido for the first time. I went to Sapporo.
And there's a train, I know where you're going with this. There's a train that goes right around
from Sapporo to Otaru.
Yeah.
And it's like you're riding on the ocean.
It really feels like the scene.
Yeah, it really feels like that. And you know, so I'm a person who, when I watch movies, I like to think about the deeper meaning of movies.
Sure.
And there's still so much in千と千尋that I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like one of them is the train. Like, why is the train the way it is? You know, and like, why is it that the train is from like 1930s? Whereas, like you said, the amusement park's from the 80s probably.
Yeah.
And then the bathhouse is from before then, like Meiji or like before that. It's very old fashioned, you know?
Yeah.
So why is it that like the train is from the 30s? You know, it's like this mix of all these different cultures. You know, one thing though I will tell you, and this is in the exact opposite direction I'm going, but
I have an answer to that not the ansser, but I have an answer that I think.
Tell me an answer, man.
Well, do you want to keep going with that?
No, because it's completely separate.
So
what I'm going to go through.
I think that was put in the film to show that Japan does not progress the same way that a lot of other countries progress.
Okay.
Right? Because when you think of like I'm going to associate with America because America is the country I'm most familiar with. When America progresses, it feels like the whole country just flips overnight.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, okay, this was okay before, now it's not okay. Here's what we're doing now. Right? And Japan doesn't feel like that. And I think the reason why all these different like eras are represented in this movie is because it represents the fact that parts of Japan will adopt a new change. And because Japan as a country is so resistant to change that there's still pockets here in this country that you can find that people are still living like it was in previous eras.
Yeah.
Right. And I think maybe that's not the reason, but that's how it feels like to me.
It could be. You know, I know like so Hayao Miyazaki, right? So he makes movies really based on his value systems. So, you know, I think about Miyazaki versus Disney a lot because they're kind of like Hayao Miyazaki is like the Disney of Japan, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And Disney is also like, I call him my spirit animal pretty much.
Like Walt Disney?
Walt Disney, yeah. Like when I need motivation, I think about Walt Disney's life pretty much. But like with Miyazaki, he really focuses on anti-nuclear war, anti-nuclear power, also environmentalism, and he does have a little bit of the good old days, Japan's going in a wrong direction kind of like message in all of his movies. I think
that's like every one of his movies has that.
Yeah, and so it could also be that he's trying to go back to like, hey, you know, things were really good in the past, you know, like let's remember good things of the past as well. I mean, who knows? But the thing that I was going to say that was totally unrelated to now that I'm glad you stopped me on was that I forget what his name is, the old guy who's making the herbs for the bath. He has all the arms that come out of him, and he's working on the
I just know him as the Oji-san.
Oji-san, yeah. So he totally reminds me of Dr. Eggman from Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh yeah, I understand where you're coming from. That he definitely is Dr. Eggman. He's a really important character though because he's so I really want to talk about this, but I really want to talk about Chihiro first. I think what they did with her in the beginning of the film is just like it's like literally looking at like masterwork art.
Okay.
Because like I just talking about her name, her name has so much meaning that it's just so densely packed. So Chihiro is her name, right? And when she goes to the god area, she has her name stripped from her.
And she becomes Sen.
And so the one of the themes with this is human trafficking with this movie, which actually you informed me that you weren't aware about, right?
Yeah, I was not aware of that.
So like one of the themes of this is human trafficking. And the fact that her name is stripped, and Sen just means 1,000 in Japanese, right? And so what she represents is a statistic. She's a statistic. She no longer has an identity. She is just a
number.
She is a number on a chart that says XYZ number of girls go missing every year and are sold into human trafficking. And that is such a, I mean, I don't want to use the term beautiful representation because it's a really dark topic, right? But it's such a beautiful representation of that. It's just like the genius that was put in just making that decision was just like, oh my God. That could not have been portrayed in a better way.
Yeah.
You know, it's like this girl enters this thing. She's, you know, like basically she's human trafficked into this thing. She's sold as a slave in this onsen, right? And she has her identity stripped from her. She's just a number now. And everything about her is just completely immediately erased.
Yeah, right.
Right?
And you know, the interesting thing is that you know, Haku tells her that she needs to be very careful that she does not forget her name, because if she forgets her name, Yubaba will own her forever. Yeah. You know, and it goes into like, you can get so far into the life that you forget who you are, and that becomes your identity.
Yeah. It's very true. But going back to the Oji-san, I think he actually does have a name, but
he does have a name, but I forgot it.
But I literally always just remember
G. That's what it is.
But so he's the only person who doesn't treat her as Sen.
Yeah.
He treats her as Chihiro.
Yeah.
And that's a really, really big, important thing because there's not a single, even Haku doesn't treat her like that initially, right? He's the only character in that show that looks at her and sees, you're a little girl. I'm going to treat you like a little girl. Hey, everybody. If you made it this far, we have an awesome opportunity to join the
Austin and Arthur Friends. Because in the Austin and Arthur Friends, you can get the rest of this video with English and Japanese subtitles and all the other videos we don't share on this channel. You can also get access to the PDF script for you to read along with the video. You'll get this long conversation in separate, smaller videos so it's easy to study, access to a Kain Gente community, members-only community, and opportunities to talk directly with us.
Wow! That's so amazing! You should join today.
Yeah, have fun.
Bye, everybody.
こういう動画では生きた英語が学べるかもしれませんが、言語学習の最大の壁は、フレーズや文法をたくさん学んでも実際に外国人と対面して話す機会が来たら、頭が真っ白になって言葉が出てこないっていう問題になることです。僕も日本に来る前に日本語を4年間勉強したのですが、日本に来たら全く喋れないっていう辛い経験をしたことがありました。でも、その経験のおかげで実際に話せるようになる鍵を発見して、世界とつながるメソッドとして無料 ebook にまとめてみました。そのメソッドを通して900人以上の方が実際に話せるようになりました。で、そのメソッドの詳細を無料 ebook でシェアしていますので、興味がありましたらこちらをクリックするか、この動画の下のリンクをクリックしてください。As always, enjoy your English adventures. 一緒に世界とつながりましょう。See you next time!